Battle of Agincourt, 1415. In 1415, on a marshy field in northern France, a small English army faced a French force 4 or 5 times larger. There, not swords or spears, but longbows, seemingly primitive weapons, wrote an immortal chapter of history. This is the story of the Battle of Agincourt, where the fate of Europe changed in a single cold, rainy day.
Part 1: Causes and Context.
Europe in the early 15th century was a chaotic picture. The Hundred Years' War, 1337 to 1453, had broken out between two great powers, England and France, over the throne and control of territory. The English had lost most of their continental holdings, holding only Calais. The young English king, Henry V, then in his early 20s, decided to restore his glory. He claimed a legitimate claim to the French crown, based on his Plantagenet lineage. But the underlying reason was economic and prestige. Henry needed a victory to consolidate his power at home. France was large but divided. Civil war between two powerful factions, the Armagnacs and the Burgundians, had thrown the court into chaos. This was the perfect time for the English to invade France. In August 1415, King Henry V led some 12,000 troops across the English Channel and attacked the French port of Harfleur. After weeks of siege, he captured the city, but disease and exhaustion reduced his army by half, leaving him with fewer than 6,000 men. Instead of retreating, King Henry decided to march across northern France towards the safety of Calais. But the French blocked the way, with a huge force of 20,000 to 30,000 men, outnumbering them by 4 or 5 to 1, mostly elite mounted knights. The two armies met near the village of Agincourt. On October 25, 1415, also the feast of the martyr Crispin.
Part 2: The Correlation of Forces.
Imagine the scene. The English, only about 6,000 men, of which nearly 5,000 were archers using longbows. They wore light armor, simple iron helmets, cloth shirts, and bows nearly 2 meters long. This weapon could shoot more than 250 meters, piercing armor at close range. Meanwhile, the French army had about 25,000 men, mostly cavalry and armored infantry, carrying swords, lances, and shields. They believed that strength and numbers would crush the English. The battle took place on the narrow Agincourt field, sandwiched between two woods. The night before the battle, there was a heavy rain, turning the ground into mud, which was inadvertently advantageous for the English. On the French side, with their heavily armored cavalry, they struggled to maneuver in the mud, losing their flexibility. The French should have postponed the battle until another time or chosen another battlefield. But because they were too arrogant, confident in the fighting ability of their cavalry and the large number of soldiers, they ignored everything, and whatever would come, would come.
Part 3: Opening the Battle.
On the morning of October 25, King Henry V ordered the English army to erect sharp wooden stakes in the ground, pointing forward, an anti-cavalry barrier. Then the English archers pulled their bowstrings, waiting. The French were confident, thinking that just one charge would be enough. They were numerous, their armor gleamed, their ranks were lined with flags. But because there were too many of them, they were crowded into the narrow space. When the French army began to advance, Henry gave the order, "Fire!" The English archers fired in unison. Tens of thousands of arrows flew, whistling like a swarm of bees. The rain of black arrows obscured the sky, then fell on the heads of the French army. The horses panicked, the knights fell, and the ranks were in disarray.
Part 4: The French Disaster.
The French knights tried to charge forward, but the mud held their horses' legs. Many horses fell, and the knights were crushed under their heavy armor. The French infantry behind them, unaware of the chaos in front, continued to crowd forward, causing the crowd to be squeezed so tightly that they could not breathe. Meanwhile, the rain of arrows continued to rain down, cutting holes in the French army's formation. When the surviving knights approached the wooden fence, they were beaten down one by the English archers and soldiers with axes, daggers, and clubs. The battlefield quickly turned into hell. People fell on top of each other, screaming, struggling in the mud and blood. The once proud knights now suffocated, trampled under their own comrades.
Part 5 The Spirit of the English Army.
The miracle was, the English army, despite hunger, thirst, and disease, fought tenaciously. Henry V, the young king, did not stand behind but directly went into battle. He wore a helmet engraved with a crown, rode his horse in the middle of the army, and shouted to his soldiers. What he said to his soldiers that day was remembered forever by posterity. Whoever stands here with me today will forever be my brother. The archers, who were just poor peasants, suddenly became heroes. They not only shot arrows but also rushed into close combat when the French knights fell off their horses. They used daggers to stab the gaps in their armor, heavily felling each knight.
Part 6 The Battle's End.
As dusk fell, the fields of Agincourt were covered with the bodies of French cavalry.
Nearly 6,000 French soldiers had died,
including many nobles, dukes, and counts. In particular, almost the entire French military elite had been wiped out in just one day. In contrast, the English side had lost only about 400 men, an incredible difference. King Henry V had won a glorious battle, transforming himself into a legend. From there, he signed the Treaty of Troyes, forcing the French king to recognize him as the heir to the throne.
Part 7 The Legacy of Agincourt.
The Battle of Agincourt was proof that numbers do not always win. Flexibility, strategy, and taking advantage of the terrain, along with the right weapon, can turn the tide. The English longbow has since become a legend, a symbol of common strength against aristocratic knights. Although the English would later lose control of France, the victory at Agincourt etched the names of Henry V and his men into history.
The end, the reverberations of history.
Today, when you walk on the fields of Agincourt, you will see only a peaceful countryside, green trees rustling, the wind blowing quietly. But more than 600 years ago, this place was a sea of blood and cries. The Battle of Agincourt reminds us that history is not written by the strongest, but by those who know how to seize the opportunity. A young king, a few thousand archers, and a rainy, muddy day. That was enough to change the fate of a dynasty. Agincourt, 1415, where arrows defeated spears, and peasants defeated knights.